Welcome, friends. Tonight we're going to be doing something special because I only have a little bit of bourbon left. I finished all the rest of it. So I'm going to be comparing a Glencairn glass of my two favorite bourbons, which you can see here, both of which are almost gone. Buffalo Trace and Elijah Craig. There's probably some top shelf bourbons I'd like even better, but I can't afford top shelf bourbon, so you're going to get a comparison view of the two bourbons that I can afford that I like. Well, I used to be able to afford. I can't afford bourbon anymore. Even bottom shelf at this point. So, here we are. We have the two bourbons here. I don't know if you can tell the difference in color. This is the Elijah Craig. This is Buffalo Trace. You can see that the Elijah Craig is a slightly darker copper color, and that the Buffalo Trace has somewhat of an orange tinge to it. These have been both sitting in nearly empty bottles, so a lot of the volatiles might have burned off at this point. Let's hope not. I got me a glass of water here to sip in between tastings. I'm kind of thankful that they're easy to tell apart by vision. Now looking at the legs, it seems that the Elijah Craig is just slightly more viscous. The Elijah Craig is probably a little bit older too. It's got a 12-year aging note. Buffalo Trace doesn't have an aging note. I'm going to be guessing it's in between 8 to 10 years. Probably closer to 10 years, I would think. Nose on them are very different. So you get both of them have that sort of caramel, vanilla, bourbon backbone. Whereas Buffalo Trace has a lot more lighter. It has a lot more of those citrusy, spicy rye notes to it. Whereas the Elijah Craig, it has a much more intense burst of smell coming from the nose. But it's a much more aged smell. The corn is stronger there, and there still is that citrus, but instead of being a bright citrus, like in here, it's more of a candied orange sort of smell. You can only smell so much before your nose hairs start to burn off here. Definitely, you get much more of a sense of a higher rye bill with this. Much more wood, caramel, and bourbon here. Also much more corn. So this one does have corn too. Corn is an element, but corn is not as much as corn has a much stronger backbone essence in this one. Or I should say, this one seems much more intense in smell. This one seems a lot more volatile and lighter in smell. If I was going to say something, I would say this one smells green, whereas this one smells brown. Of course, they're both kind of a reddish orange, so take what you will of it. Okay, let's get this started here. There's immediate light pepperiness on the palate. Well, you can tell that I haven't had hard liquor in a while because it's burning, man. There's light oaking to the finish. That's mixed with a bright orange. There's a caramel to the mid palate. And the wood is strongest in the mid palate for that one. Moving on to the Elijah Craig. I've got to note that was Buffalo Trace I was trying first. Immediately, much more of an immediate sweetness on the tongue. And it goes down a bit smoother, too. Though, technically, I probably shouldn't have been doing this after I've had acid reflux all day. Whew! I'm gonna give myself esophageal cancer this way, man. The sweetness holds throughout, and there's still lingering sweetness to the finish, but the finish here is largely of charred wood and burnt sugar. The front end has almost a Cercial or Verdelho style port flavor to it. Not so much from the wood aging, it's not aged in port barrels, but that sort of acid tang, yet still of dried fruits, not of lively fruits like this one, like the Buffalo Trace. I would say that they're equally sweet, but the spicy pepperiness of the rye aspect here kind of overwhelms the sweetness from start to finish. Now, I usually drink this neat, but in comparison to the Elijah Craig, I almost think that this one would do a little bit better with a small dollop of water or maybe an ice cube or two. Just to go and make those really intense top notes, just to bring it down a notch. There's sort of a light vanilla to just mid palate there. And almost the citrus part of the finish is almost lemony towards the end. Wood taste is almost an afternote there. It's just slightly woody. You don't really taste any charring. You just taste that it's been aged in wood barrels. Let's go back to Elijah Craig. There's definitely a fuller, rounder mouthfeel with the Elijah Craig. It's smoother. And you get more dimensions out of it. With the Buffalo Trace, you sort of have to go and get past that sharp rye aspect. This is much more traditionally corn, wood, and vanilla, but there's still other taste elements to it. Hints of molasses. The only thing that doesn't please me is just the charred part of the finish is just a wee bit too intense for me. It just kind of leaves a bitter aftertaste on my palate that's not overly pleasant. While in the beginning it's pretty interesting, but after the sweetness fades, after the sugar fades, after even the rest of the char, interesting part of the char fades, you're just kind of left with this sort of burnt bitterness left in your mouth. Excuse me. This is aged, but it still tastes young. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that there's more angles to the flavor, more sharp spots, more spiciness, more overwhelming points. Neither of these is a bad bourbon. Both of these are bourbons that you should go out and try. If I were to explain it in two different ways, this is your pre-dinner drink. Before you have your appetizer, have it on the rocks, have it in a nice cocktail, or maybe even straight. This is your post-dinner drink. The Elijah Craig. Probably should be saying which one I'm grabbing at each point. This is your post-dinner drink. Rounded, mellow, smooth, a nice cap to a nice evening. Of the two, which one do I prefer? Well, considering that I've eaten dinner already, and my throat's a little bit raw because of the acid reflux, I'm going to go with the Elijah Craig as the one that's appealing to me more right now. But since they're both quality, and since I like both, depending on when you ask me, or what I'm doing, I might pick the Buffalo Trace, I might pick the Elijah Craig, or I might pick another whiskey entirely. So, there you go, folks. Your comparative tasting. Cheers! Actually, let's see if I can get it to go and ring. These crystal glasses have such a nice ring. Yeah. Oh yeah, cheers!